Thank you for joining the internal communication series that I run on my blog. This is a long running series that I run with practitioners just to help people understand what are some of the best practices in this evolving domain. So it'll be great if you could quickly introduce yourself for our viewers.
Thanks, Anisu, for this opportunity. I'm Sushmita Bandopadhyay, and I lead the communications function at Becton Dickinson, India. For the past 10 years, I have been with BD. So, internal communications has come as a revelation in my journey at BD. So, prior to joining BD, I was with PR Consulting World. So, it's a total of, I would say, 20 plus years now.
Fantastic. So let's get started with the first question in terms of what is your understanding of internal communications and what does it mean to you?
So, when we studied PR course, we were told internal communications is like the mouthpiece of the organization.
Hmm.
Honestly, mouthpiece is a very generic word. It is far deeper and far rich in the function that comes along with internal communications. I would say it's like the lifeline of an organization.
Hmm.
It's the organization's responsibility to ensure that every employee is kept informed, and that
Hmm.
can be only best served with a function called internal communications.
Brilliant. And how does it get practiced at BD? I mean, what are some of the nuances of it?
Yeah, in fact, internal communications team globally is far bigger than the external comms team. So
True.
that's a great plus for us.
Right.
We are regularly communicating with our employees or associates, as we call them internally. We have periodic town halls. We have
Mhm.
quarterly newsletters. We have annual kickoffs
Mhm.
where we ensure everyone meets up, and every region, every geography does in their own style, in their own way. In India, we have had, I would say, half yearly town halls. We
Mhm.
have monthly, updates going out from the leadership,
Right.
and it's a beautiful combination of storytelling,
Mhm.
updates,
Mhm.
insights,
Mhm.
report outs, but
Mhm.
we ensure that we utilize every channel available to us to ensure that everyone is on the same page and nothing comes across as a surprise to our employees.
Fantastic. I think that's a great point. I think there should be no surprises for employees in terms of what's happening around them. So if you could share an example or a campaign or some project which you are personally proud of, where internal communications worked really well, what are some of the ways in which you went about it? How did you measure it? What are the outcomes?
Um, in fact, recent COVID crisis has given so many opportunities for us to connect one another.
Right.
And one of the great examples, which is close to my heart, and I feel really proud that I could do justice to my role,
Mhm.
was the COVID Heroes campaign. Now,
Wow.
being a healthcare company, we have the responsibility and that deep desire to serve the communities.
Hmm.
And COVID became the perfect opportunity for us to actually express our gratitude towards the nurses, the healthcare community.
Right.
While we were doing this externally, we thought it's a great way to even honor and acknowledge the sales employees who are out in the field.
Right.
They really didn't bother whether they are inside or outside, but they were
Mm.
with the hospital caregivers,
Mm.
in the hospitals, in the laboratories. So
Mm.
we ran this campaign. It was a 5 month long campaign, and it
Right.
was a daily emailer that went
Wow.
out featuring one sales employee every day. And I
Wonderful.
personally spoke to each employee,
Great.
each salesperson, and it featured why why they feel proud to be working with BD in a time like
Mm.
COVID-19, and
Mm.
what is it that their customers are expecting from them at this time. Only two questions, but
Mm.
at the end of the conversation, each was very fulfilling. So I featured almost 180 employees
Wow.
across India from various cities, various geographies,
Mm.
and each each story had their their photograph in the, I would say, in the PT kit,
Right.
but alongside was their family photograph. And
Great.
that was a very beautiful contrast, I would say, because
Absolutely.
here that person is going out on the field in his full uniform, and
Hmm.
on the other hand, he is celebrating with his family at some, it could be any milestone. So it was a beautiful campaign that we ran. It was only India specific, while the external was a global campaign.
Right.
uh, BD is a very conservative organization in terms of, I would say, we don't really like to talk too much about
Right.
what we
Yeah.
do. And this was one opportunity where we offered the employees to actually post these stories, their personal stories, on their social media platforms,
Right.
on their personal social media platforms, and that drove a sense of pride and purpose amongst all these associates, and not just these 180. I would say the 1,000 plus that are working for BD in India and South Asia. It
Hmm.
was a moment of great pride. So yes, this is one campaign that I will remain close to my heart forever. Yes.
Fantastic. And if I may ask, I mean, was there any way, apart from the social media engagement, was there a way in which you could measure how this campaign was doing?
Yes, so we have an internal platform called the Yammer, and
Hmm.
every day we used to post these mailers on Yammer, and the number of comments, shares, likes that that became the perfect matrix for us to measure that how popular the campaign became, and it
Right.
was really sad to end it. It can
Right.
it This is one campaign that can be eternal to BD, I would say.
Absolutely. Great. Brilliant. So what is your understanding of, what's the biggest challenge, or rather, yeah, what is the challenge that internal communications face, according to you?
Um, we are a sales driven organization, and 80 to 90% of our employees are on the field all the time. So,
Hmm.
the biggest challenge and an opportunity for a communicator is how do I reach my person who is traveling on a bike 100 kilometers inside a city
Right.
away from Chennai? How do I
Right.
do that? So how do I
Hmm.
reach? How does he access his mail and ensures that if I have asked for some information, how is he able to, reply
Right.
in time? I think that is a challenge, a consistent challenge. And
Hmm.
since we, as I said, we are a conservative organization. So,
Hmm.
uh, but as we transform into the digital journey, I'm
Hmm.
sure going forward we will have multiple platforms to, deal with.
Great. And related to that, what do you think is the biggest opportunity you see?
Keeping them all connected digitally. So,
Hmm.
how do we
Hmm.
do that?
Hmm.
WhatsApp is definitely not the best option, but is
Hmm.
there anything equivalent where we
Hmm.
all can come together
Hmm.
and do real-time conversations? I think Yammer is a great platform, but it's not very user-friendly on mobile for many.
Right.
But if there is a way that we can create an app, perhaps, where we all come together and talk to each other, I think
Right.
that would be a great help.
Fantastic. And there is this thought that internal communicators don't really add a lot of value to the business. So what is your advice for how can they go about building credibility for themselves and adding value to the business?
I think I would definitely not want to believe that IC can't, add value to business strategy. I think right at the beginning of the year, my leadership, if they are proposing or lining out the strategy for the whole organization, it's the role of the internal communicator to ensure that it's hammered and it's relayed at every frequent intervals because it's important. um,
Mm.
right in the beginning of the year, I launch a theme for the year and etc
Mm.
etc, but 3 months down the line no one remembers it. What's the
Mm.
point of doing that
Exactly.
hullabaloo noise
Right.
right in the beginning of the year? So I think it is completely aligned with the organizational agenda, with the
Mm.
business strategy, and above all, if we try and create great hooks, great stories
Mm.
which are aligned with the purpose of the company, that
Right.
works very well. That's never going to fail.
Great. And what do you think are some of the key skills that internal communicators must have?
You got to love people. You got to
Okay.
love people. You got to have heart in the right place.
Right.
You have to have your organizational goal and agenda in mind and not your personal agenda.
Hmm.
This is not a position if you want to gain popularity. You have to make your people popular. You have to make
Right.
your associates and employees
Right.
popular,
Right.
not yourselves. I think that skill is something that you must have.
Got it. And there are a lot of people out there, young people who want to join this domain. So what's your advice for young people who want to join internal communication and make a mark for themselves?
I think they should see this as a very important role. It's
Hmm.
not a flimsy role, number one. It's
Hmm.
not a good to have on your CV, no ways.
Hmm.
It is
Hmm.
not just about printing newsletters and running one campaign a year or winning an award. No, not at
Right.
all. It's something which has to be embedded in your value system. It has
Hmm.
to transform the culture of an
Hmm.
organization, and it has to really communicate what your company stands for. If
Hmm.
you have that, if you want to pursue that, if you really want to drive growth, if you really want to drive culture, and if you
Hmm.
really want to drive the pride and purpose of a company, only
Hmm.
then should you opt for this role.
Got it.
Because this is a long-term role. I
Yeah.
strongly believe that. As I've been with BD for 10 years now,
Wow.
but
Okay.
it's only the last 3 to 4 years that IC has become so embedded into my function that
Hmm.
I feel that this is much more beautiful than the external communication.
Got it. Brilliant. And a related question to that, as a woman leader, so what's your advice for other women who want to kind of make a mark or think about being more engaged in this kind of a domain or make a mark in this function? What's your advice for them?
I think it's important for us to be vulnerable.
Hmm.
We must allow ourselves to not be so harsh on ourselves and
Hmm.
share our stories with others, share our lessons with others,
Right.
and then probably seek for more stories around us. If
Hmm.
I can't be an example, I cannot seek examples from around me.
Got it. Brilliant. And you mentioned about COVID-19 and the campaign you did, but I want to ask you, based on what you're seeing, what has changed because of COVID and what has stayed the same because of COVID? Any thoughts on that?
I think leadership is highly engaged right now.
Mm, mm,
Earlier they used to think it's just one message that has to go out from my desk,
right,
but no more.
right,
That's not the case anymore.
right,
Leadership wants to know, wants to understand the pulse of the organization. They want to hear from them, and they want to, respond to what the organization is asking for. So
right,
there'll be more of employee surveys, more of
mm,
satisfaction surveys for internal audience,
right,
uh, and I think the pride and purpose will remain core to any organization, and it will be something that we all will continue to wear on our sleeve. It will no
mm,
longer be just I would say, not just the HR agenda, but it
right.
has to be leadership and employee agenda. It's the organizational agenda. So that's going to remain, and it's going to evolve in the days to come.
Brilliant, brilliant. And if you were to look back at your career and if there was one thing you like to change, what do you think that is about internal communication specifically?
That's a tough ask, but it's a beautiful question, I would say. I think internal communications needs a lot of, I would say, it needs to be packaged in a way so that it becomes
Hmm.
lucrative for the next generation.
Hmm.
When I was on the agency consulting side, all
Hmm.
I used to hear was employee newsletter. But when I
Hmm.
came to ED, there was an ocean available for me to
Right.
explore and create new things for this organization. So I think the sellability of internal communications role has to be
Right.
much more lucrative, much more authentic. It
Hmm.
can't be a hogwash for sure,
Right.
because you're dealing with real people, real stories,
Right.
and it's for internal purposes, right? You're creating an
Absolutely.
employer brand for your organization. So I think if I were to change or tell my younger self, read more about how organizations have changed over the years.
Mm,
Books like Good to Great Companies by
right.
Jim Collins. I think
Mm,
we must inculcate those reading habits in
right.
our young days to be able to do justice to such roles.
Brilliant. And as we wrap up, what's your understanding of one trend that you spot in internal communications?
um, Leadership is going to stay engaged. It's going to
Mm,
be driven top down. It's
right.
no longer going to be run in silos or run by an individual. It's going to
Mm,
be an organizational agenda. Yes.
brilliant, brilliant. This is excellent insights. Thank you so much, Sushmita, for taking the time to share your, perspectives on this. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Anisu, for your time. Thank you so much.